To recap, we search databases in two ways. First, with controlled vocabulary, such as MESH for Medline, which indexes assigned to records to overcome spelling variation. But also, and importantly, if we have any pretensions to a systematic search, by looking for occurrences of words and phrases in particular fields, often the title and abstract. If we wanted to search for hematuria, we would first of all use term mapping to find the thesaurus terms. So I will type in hematuria. Map term to subject heading is checked. Hit search. It goes off and finds the term. With the American spelling, you'll note, because MESH is produced in America, we'll select that term. And there it is in our search. So if I click on the down arrow there, you can see our search history. Then we'd also want to look for it in title and abstract. Do we use British English or American English spelling? We could use both and combine with or, but a more elegant way to achieve this would be to use a wildcard. So H question mark EMATURIA, title, comma AB dot. We'll find both. The question mark has the effect of standing for one character or none. If you just wanted to find one character as a wildcard, then use a hash mark. The results probably speak for themselves. We have found 12,000 odd using the thesaurus term, but if we look for any occurrence of the word anywhere in the title or abstract, there's considerably more, nearly 22,000. There are plenty more examples of the absence of the digraphs AE or OE in American medical English. Think of edema, spelt OE or just E, or anemia, ANE or ANAE, for example. It may be worth mentioning that sometimes we can be misled. Take the suffix penia or penic. Strictly, we should not need to search for variations. The Greek is very clear. Penia means a lack, need, poverty, according to Liddell and Scott, not spelt with the AE digraph. So there should be no need to include versions spelt PAENIA in a search. But we can be too clever by half. Look at this example search for thrombocytopenia. The extra A is, as we've seen, a solecism, but it is one that's used in the literature. It finds 900 odd papers spelt that way. So as searchers, we have to put purity aside and get ourselves dirty. I want to look at three more examples. Caesarean section. Here the possibilities make the mind boggle. The association with Julius Caesar is apocryphal. His mother survived his birth, lived to a ripe old age, and was still going strong when her son invaded Britain in 55 BC. It's more likely from an early Roman law, the Lex Caesarea, which required that when a woman died in childbirth, the baby should be cut out of the womb. So the point to remember, please, is that it is from Latin. Medline. Lines 1 and 2 are straightforward, and then line 3 combines them with or. In line 4, I've done much the same thing, but this time using a wildcard. Note that it finds one more paper than line 3, so something odd is happening. What next? Well, lines 5 and 6 look for papers where people can't spell Caesar. So they spell it C, optional A, E-S-E-R, and we get a few results. We'd have missed these, though, if we'd used the conventional spelling. Then, suppose in lines 7 and 8, authors used an IAN ending rather than the EAN one. This time, we get fairly significant numbers of papers. Finally, the nightmare scenario, if you wish. Let's see what happens if they both don't know how to spell Caesar and they use an IAN ending, and lines 9 and 10 show you that. My next example is an interesting one, and I refer you to Rolf Birch, who in his Surgical Disorders of the Peripheral Nerves points out that an incorrect rendering of the term neurapraxia as neuropraxia is widespread. It's an understandable error, so many terms begin with the neuro prefix, but here neur, N-E-U-R, is derived from the Greek for a sinew or tendon. Greek apraxia is a term in its own right for non-action, hence neurapraxia is failure of conduction in a nerve due to injury, compression or ischemia. The alpha here is what's called the privative alpha, which is familiar to us. In other words, anorexia, apathy, for example. So who spells it correctly and who doesn't? In Medline, the incorrect spelling finds more hits, 513, than the correct one, 406. The same is true in Embase. And look, 6 papers use both spellings. 2 of these for the very good reason that they are warning us against the misspelling, but the remaining 4 manage to use both in the same paper. Professor Birch concludes, "It is all the sadder that declining standards of literacy have combined with rising looseness of thought to render the use of the term neuropraxia a commonplace, even in formally reputable journals and textbooks. Punishment should be reserved for clinicians using this meaningless neologism. Lawyers using it should lose their fees. Classicists using it should suffer an appropriate loss." One more example. Ophthalmos, the Greek word for eye, is used in a number of terms, both to describe the specialty concerned with the eye, equipment used to examine the eye, and diseases affecting the whole eye. The Greek spelling uses 2 aspirated consonants, phi and theta, which sounded like pi and tau, but with a faint H sound. So English spelling represents these with an H, O-P-H-T-H-A. But what happens in the literature? Again, let's look at Medline. The correctly spelt version finds 57,000 odd papers. But a version where P is used rather than PH still finds 353, and one that correctly uses PH but T rather than TH finds 389. I suppose we should just be grateful that no one used the last version with no H after either the P or the T. I hope that's been interesting. I think our conclusion is that if we hope for orthographic purity in databases, we hope in vain. Authors and editors, alas, will often fall from the path of righteousness. We cannot rely on the databases themselves to put things right. Most of those these days simply import data unchecked or with very few checks from the journals. So that's not going to solve the problem. If we want to search, and we want to search comprehensively, it's definitely worth thinking about whether there are unorthodox spellings that we might want to include in our strategies. I hope you found that useful. If you have ideas for other topics you'd like me to cover in these videos, do put them below in the comments, or get in touch with me and let me know. You can find me on Twitter or on email. And I have one in preparation on proximity operators that I hope will be out. Let's say next week, shall we? And after that, who knows? So thank you very much for your attention, and happy searching.